Hello, and welcome to Point A. You'll realize what I'm talking about after watching this video. Hey everybody, YouTube, what's going on? Cody Warren, the Film Nerd here, and welcome to the Learning Center. The Film Learning Center. In the Learning Center, I will discuss many things throughout the video. If you just so happen to miss anything, there will be links at the end to specific times and specific subjects that I touch on. Today we're going to be discussing a topic that I just recently discussed in one of my college classes, which is narrative film. The specific things we will be discussing today are obviously narrative film, where it comes from, how it started, what is involved in a narrative film, and the different types of narrative film. So, first off, as I'm sure many of you know what film is, let's discuss the word narrative. A narrative is essentially the telling of a story, storytelling through media, and these medias can include film, radio, TV, books, magazines, newspapers, etc. Now, the term narrative derives from this Latin word, which I'm not even going to try to pronounce because I feel like no matter how I say it wrong. But this word here, when directly translated, actually means to recount. Now let's discuss the different types and modalities of narrative film. Of course, as I'm sure you all know, just like in books and radio and TV, there is both fictional and non-fictional. Fictional is a made-up story. It's just, it can be almost anything, and it's usually what I find interesting. Non-fictional film is a depiction or is based off of true real-life events, which oftentimes, I believe, can be a lot less boring than fictional. For instance, in a fictional film, you may have like a superhero or a wizard, when in real life, non-fiction, it may be something like a computer technician. Which I have nothing against computer technicians. Magic and superpowers seems more interesting to me. But that's just me. Now, of course, beyond fictional and non-fictional, there are other modalities of narrative film, such as linear narrative. Now, linear narrative is the one you see most often in theaters, which is you start at point A and you work your way all the way to point B. Quite often the time depicted here is chronological, though while there is no jumping around, it can jump forward. So we may have a scene on this day, and the next scene could take place a week later, as long as point A and B are just, that one straight line. But now what happens when we break out of that linear narrative? Well, that is what we called a fractured narrative. A fractured narrative is where we have scenes that are taking place at different times in different places in the movie. This is not chronological and would not make sense in the real world. A good example of this would be the film Memento by Christopher Nolan, which is in reverse. It starts essentially at the end and works its way to the beginning, which is really cool. Now, whether or not you consider this a linear narrative in reverse or a fractured narrative is kind of up to you, but still, this film is a really good example. Now, there are certain ways you show a fractured film. One of these ways is through flashbacks, which is often shown, through like a different color, maybe something's blurred, the whole waviness and the harps, or if you're watching Wayne's World, it's that whole thing. Another way this is depicted is through voiceover. Now, the way this is used is when the narrator, or quite often a main character, talks over the clips being shown. They're not actually there, but they're talking over the clips being shown, telling the story, telling the narrative to the audience. Audience? A good recent example of this, I believe, would be the film Easy A, where the main character, Olive Pendergast, discusses her school year and, the many different things that happened with it through a webcam to the audience. Audience? It's always flashing back to her talking to a webcam, but sometimes she's doing the voice over the scenes and it constantly, switches back to the story. At the end, we kind of catch up to where she is, and so the story that she's telling and her telling the story end up connecting, and we go off in real time. Ah, crap, my camera's gonna die. Now, there's linear narrative, there's fractured narrative, and what happens if we break out of that? Well, often this is an artistic film, sometimes known as avant-garde, and this is, way out of the ordinary. And just so you don't get confused, keep in mind this is not narrative film. I just wanted to kind of include this since I won't be making a lengthy vlog about this stuff. I just wanted to separate, there's the differences here. There's essentially no real time in this world. We break out of that idea of real time, and it's just a big old jumbled mess that could be viewed very artistically, could be viewed in many different ways. A couple of films we watched in my film class that depict this very well are Man with a Movie Camera and Konya Waskatsi. I believe I said that right. But these films have no speaking. They're essentially silent films, but they have music playing, kind of just go through clips randomly. These films convey a huge range of meanings and messages, but the way those are viewed all depends on the audience. Audience! Congratulations on making it to the end of my video. Now, if there's anything you missed specifically that you wanted to see again, click on any of the links over here. And yes, I know my posters are crooked, and I'm sorry, but it's kind of hard to tell when you're really close putting them up. So I'll fix that soon. Thanks. Pointing again. And congratulations, you made it to point B. Watch my next video.